Melanie?
Okay, it looks like it's recording now.
Okay, great. Then I would like to convene the Finance Committee meeting today, March 8th, 2021 at 1:03 p.m. Roll call, please.
I
Jim,
don't think
do
we don't usually do it for the finance committee, do we?
Just roll call the two finance committee members,
Oh, okay.
please.
Yeah,
Commissioner Chang Karali,
present.
Commissioner Matoush.
Here.
Okay, we'll go to public comment. I'll open up public comment right now for items that are not on the agenda. Melanie, do we have any comments? I
No,
don't-
we don't have anyone.
Okay, great. Then I'll close public comment and we'll go to item number 1, which is introductions and review the agenda. I don't see any problem with the agenda. I mean, as written by the staff. Tom, what about you?
No, that's fine.
Okay, then why don't we go to item number 2, which is review the mission statement of the Finance Committee. Julie, do you want to take a stab at this? You and Jim?
Okay. The mission statement that was presented to the Finance Committee on February 27th, 2020 states the following: develop and communicate district financial plan while protecting and managing district income and assets.
Sounds good to me.
I'm sorry, can you reread that one more time? Julie, sorry, I'm just trying to take it
Sure.
apart right now.
Develop and communicate district financial plan while protecting and managing district income and assets.
While managing, read the second part again.
District income and assets.
But while managing and protecting?
Well, it's while protecting and managing district income
Okay.
and assets.
Okay, I'm okay with that too. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so why don't we, is there a motion to approve the mission statement of the Finance Committee?
So
And
moved.
actually, oh, go ahead, Tom.
So moved.
And I'll second that. Roll call, please, Melanie.
Commissioner Chang Karali,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush.
Aye.
So this mission statement for the Finance Committee has been approved, and that is, Jim, that's going to go on to the agenda. Is that correct? You're on mute.
Yes, it will. It will be placed on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So then we'll move to item number 3, which is the first look of the FY 2021-2022 budget and capital improvement plan.
Okay.
Julie?
Okay, I'll share my screen. Okay, so I'll do my best to go through the key points of the draft first look of the 21-22 operating budget and 5-year capital improvement plan. This cover was put together by Lizzie. This whole budget document was a group effort, and I think that it starts off with a very beautiful picture of Pillar Point Harbor and the sunset. This is our table of contents. There are 4 parts of this budget: the introduction. Section 1 is the operating budget. Section 2, 5-year capital improvement program. And section 3 is the policies and definitions. For the 2021 budget, the district has been successful in obtaining a distinguished budget award presentation from Government Finance Officers Association, and we hope to get an award for this budget document. But in order to do so, we need to include some of the recommendations of the budget reviewers and add some new requirements that were put into place on January 1st, 2021 from GFOA. And the biggest new requirement that we're going to add is departmental performance indicators, goals, and objectives. Our staff is currently working on developing this item, and throughout this budget document are highlighted placeholders for things that are going to be added for the preliminary budget. As you know, this budget is a work in process, and we just found out on Wednesday that property insurance is supposed to go up 20%, and that's about another $40,000 of expenses that is not incorporated in this first look. SDRMA expects to send us an estimate by the end of March, and so we'll include that in the preliminary budget also. This first section, the introduction section, we used to have what was called the budget summary. That budget summary has now been incorporated into the executive summary, and this is the letter to the Harbor Commission from the general manager. The second item that we added is a budget calendar. This is one of the reviewers said that we need to have a notification to the general public on how they can interact with the Harbor Commission in order to provide their input. So this budget calendar will work with the Finance Committee to fill in the 2 dates in April and either at the end of May or beginning of June for another review of this budget document before it becomes a preliminary document for adoption at the board on April 21st, and before it becomes a final budget document that will be presented on June 16th at a public meeting. I put to be decided for the location because I'm not sure. Hopefully we're not going to be on Zoom, but I don't know how long we'll be in the state of emergency. This is going to be primarily the same. This priorities and performance goals have been, greatly improved upon. The general manager presented these goals and objectives at the last board meeting, and so those have been incorporated into this budget document. It was what the Harbor Commission approved. And this is a continuation of that. In the section about us, our budget reviewers recommended that we add things like what are the population trends for San Mateo County, the major industries, housing and homeless that we touched on in the previous section will probably be moved down to this section. Some of the statistical information that's provided by San Mateo County in their financial report. So we'll be taking some of that information directly out of their reports. This is the summary of what the budget looks like for this year. It compares the 2021 projection versus the 21-22 budget summary. As you can see, the operating revenues, we're expecting operating revenues to increase by 4.47%. And this is due because if you remember, the board approved us not raising fees on the last fiscal year, July 1st, 2020. And that was going to increase our fees by the cost of living increase, which is 3.3% for the Bay Area. We said we're going to postpone that, and then the following year that we will add that 3.3% to whatever the COLA increase was for the calendar year of 2020, which is 1.7%, for a total combined 5% fee increase. That's what's anticipated. That will go before the board for consideration, but this budget incorporates that assumption that the board will approve a 5% increase in the fees. That's slightly offset by continuing of decrease of operating revenues at Oyster Point Marina, primarily caused by the adjacent large development project. Our non-operating revenues are expected to decrease by 2.8%. Overall, property values are expected to increase by 3.86% in San Mateo County for our district. And that is reduced because we had a one-time payout this fiscal year of $531,000 that we're not expected to have next fiscal year. So the net effect of those two things is a decrease of 2.8%. And so that
Julie, the
yeah.
531,000 is the ERAF funds, right? Or the ERAF funds, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So, do we know for a fact that we're not expected to get any more? I mean, I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure we're budgeting this as a one-time revenue source.
My understanding is that the state has changed the process for ERAF and the calculation of the ERAF funds, and that's been approved. But what the county was doing was holding on to money, anticipating that the state was going to change the ERAF calculation. And so they were setting these funds aside in our name and holding on to them in case they needed to send them back to the state. Well, when the state made the approval, they said, okay, we're going to do it prospectively and not go back and try to get the funds from prior years. So the county released this amount of money that was from the prior years. We're still going to get ERAF money from the county. It's just going to be at it's going to be like at the same rate that we were getting, but they're not going to be releasing this held back money, I guess is the best way to put it. They were calculating it two different ways.
Okay.
The way that we're expecting the state to approve it and the way that they had historically done it. The state made that decision to approve their methodology. And now we're going to be we'll probably get about $500,000 in ERAF every year going forward.
Okay, because it made it look, when I read this part, it made it, and maybe it's just me, it made it sound like this was just a one-time revenue source that we were getting, and that we weren't going to have any more. But if that's not the case, then I mean, we're treating ERAF right now as one time. Are we treating ERAF? I can't remember. Are we treating ERAF as one time or incorporating it into the budget as revenue, annual revenue?
We're incorporating it into the budget as annual revenue because we're taking our current year's property tax number, and we're increasing it by 3.8%, 6% across the board. But I can I can explain this maybe a little bit better of, this is prior year's release of money
Right,
that the state let us keep, basically.
Right.
But
Oh,
they're not
yeah.
going to let us keep this money and keep the money in the future.
You mean this amount, not future
Right.
ERAF funds?
Right, there was a change in the way that they calculated school districts what is the name of those special school districts? It's escaping me right now. They're not the public school, but they're like an offshoot that the people can go
The
to.
charter schools?
Charter schools, thank you, yeah. It was on the top of my tongue, but I couldn't get it out. So they were including the charter schools in the ERAF calculations, and then the state decided that they couldn't do that anymore. So part of this is related to that change.
Okay, okay. Yeah, okay, but this amount is not the amount that we're gonna be consistently getting annually, correct?
Correct. This is
Okay.
like a accumulation of a couple years of ERAF that the county was calculating, but was holding back in
Yeah.
anticipation of the state.
Okay, because that just
Yeah.
wasn't clear when I read that, but that may have just
Yeah.
been me.
Yeah, there's farther down, I've explained it a little bit more, but I can expand this to try to clarify it.
Well, I
If
mean,
I
we
can do
do
that.
get ERAF funds, right? This is just
Right.
one of those weird situations where we're not, where we're getting, it's kind of like backed up, right? Back, it's like almost like back pay
Right.
that we're only gonna get one time. But that doesn't mean
Exact-
we're not getting ERAF funds in our budget. So I would almost kind of just add maybe a couple of sentences clarifying that in that second bullet point.
Okay.
Isn't
I
this
can do
related to
that.
some change in ownership or something with the county? Is that this the same money that we got? They revised how they interpreted something. So we got paid out on this and it was supposed to be not happening again, or am I confusing it with something else?
This is from school districts, Tom. Are you thinking
Yeah.
of the teeter stuff, the property
No.
taxes?
No.
Okay.
We did present this to the Harbor Commission at a previous meeting in more detail. I can try to find that staff report and send it to you. If that will be helpful, because what you're saying is true, yes. It's related to the calculations of, how much money it's like our county gets excess ERAF. So the excess ERAF is a handful of counties get this excess ERAF, which basically the school districts are made whole by the state. And then they do this whole ERAF calculation, and everyone in San Mateo County has to pay a portion of what wasn't funded by the state to the school districts. And then we get a rebate back from that ERAF calculation that the county put in. So we're still going to get a little portion of the excess ERAF. And it's all related to how San Mateo County was doing the calculation and how the state says they have to do it in the future. But I think the staff report probably says that more eloquently than I'm saying it now. Does that ring any bells, Tom?
No, that's fine. We'll just
Okay.
look at that staff report.
Okay, salaries, wages, and benefit expenditures are projected to increase by 6.07% due to estimated 5% salary and wage and benefit cost increase, along with anticipation of being fully staffed in fiscal year 21-22. So we still had partial year vacancies in this current year that the next year's budget is not going to include. And with the COLA increases and the STEP programs for the unions, 5% increase is an estimate that has been working in the past budgets. I might add that in the budget last year, we were expecting 25% health benefit costs. And I mentioned this in mid-year budget, but we did not realize that because what happened with this COVID pandemic is people stopped going to the doctor. They didn't have as many claims as what was expected by the health insurance companies. So now that large increase isn't projected in this first look of the budget. Usually information regarding next year's insurance costs come out, later part of this month. So this may change. But the other thing that happened is that our retirement costs decreased because we had prepaid $2.3 million in the long-term unfunded liability of CalPERS, and that's decreasing our benefit costs about $120,000 annually now. And this is the first year that we've experienced that decrease because CalPERS is a couple years behind. The non-personnel expenditures are budgeted to decrease by 1.96% due to an anticipated decrease in legal fees, utilities, and operating expenses. One thing, if you've looked at the detail of the departmental budgets, both the garbage and the sewer costs at Pillar Point Harbor have about doubled. And because there's so many more people coming in and everybody is getting takeout, and so we've gone from having to have the garbage picked up. I think it's once a week to twice a week now. So that's increased the expenses this year. So that's in the projection, but it's not in our new budget, that increased cost. And the fiscal year 2021 projection includes approximately $646,000 in biennial election costs. And of course, this year we're not going to have an election, so that's not included. So at the end of this year, we're expecting $3.1 million to be available to fund our capital project program. Do you have any questions on the operating budget so far before I go on the next one?
No.
No, thank you.
We talked about this. So the public and enterprise services, we're expected to get property tax of approximately $8.1 million. Of that, $1.2 million will be used for public operations, OPM, $1.3 million for public operations at Pillar Point Harbor, and $2.5 million for administrative functions, leaving that $3.1 million available for capital improvement program funding. We're recommending that the staffing authorizations stay the same. Our current year budget has 41 positions. Next year's budget is proposed at 41 with no changes into that. I'm just gonna go through the departmental schedules. It includes a lot of detail of how we got to the estimates to the level that the Harbor Commission approves. But if you have any questions on the departmental budgets, I'd be happy to answer those too.
Do we have an
Yeah, I'm
idea
going-
or way forward that we can decrease some of those election costs? It seems like almost we were sold a bill of goods with districted elections because it's still costing us a lot of money.
Yeah, when I talked to the elections department, we have now more ballots, different ballots that they have to do. It's not, add 2 or 3 commissioners to everyone's ballot. They have now different districts that will have different people, depending on what road or street you live on. So I guess there's more ballot printing they have to do, but that's not the primary cost, is my understanding, because they only charged us $11,000 this year to go to district elections. I think that the election,
600,000.
right, that $11,000 was directly attributable to the district elections. The rest of it is the allocation of all of the election costs by the number of people in each of the elections. So because our districts are so large, we get a large portion of the election costs. And I don't know if that's a conversation that we can renegotiate that with the county. But it is an allocation of total costs by number of people that are in the districts that are having elections. So like a city is going to have a lower cost than our district because we go across multiple cities when we have an election, for example.
I think
That
it's kind
makes
of funny
sense.
that as a candidate, you still pay pretty hefty fees. And then as a district, we're being charged as well.
Yeah, Tom, if I can interrupt, instead of running one election now with three commissioners one season and 2 the other season, we're running 5 separate elections. And we're getting charged for each one of those elections separately almost. So the additional cost is, we are going to pay additional costs for the elections versus saving money from countywide. Each individual election will be less than the overall. So District 1 looks like we're saving money, but when you add them all up, the 5 district elections adds up to more than one countywide election.
Yeah, basically, Tom, it would, if in this last election cycle with the 2 of us running, right? And I don't know, I think Bill was, I don't know, was he on the ballot this year? I know he was.
He didn't have to. He wasn't
Yeah,
even on the
because-
ballot.
Correct. Okay, so instead of 1 ballot, there were 2. One for District 4 and one from District 5. And it sounds like that's what is causing the increase of the cost.
It
Is
could
that
just be
correct?
allocation of expenses, because allocation is a funny thing.
That's correct. I mean,
Or-
so it's going to be the cost versus the allocation, right?
Well, it's probably the allocation, not the cost. The other way
No, I
around.
think the cost of, okay,
We're allocated across the entire county and the entire election. Our cost, if we only were in 2 districts, would, anyway, let's just let it go.
yeah, but what I'm saying is the costs have gone up.
Yeah, overall, if I may interrupt one more,
Yeah,
and I apologize, I don't mean to speak over you.
no, go ahead, Jim.
So
Thank you.
last year's budget, we allocated it, or was it for the elections, for 3 districts to run. And that was like $1.2 million. When Commissioner District 1 was the only commissioner to run, Zemke, he was no longer put on the ballot. So our estimated charge went down significantly, I think close to $500,000. So District 1 alone was $500,000. But if somebody would have run against Commissioner Zemke, we would have had to pay that cost. And this
Okay.
Correct.
for District 4 and 5, if only one person was running, we wouldn't pay anything for it. But because there was more than one, we had to pay for that full election in that district. So instead of paying for 3 elections this year, we only paid for 2. So the next election cycle for 2022 will be 2 elections. We'll have to budget for 2 elections for the 2 districts. But again, if only one person runs in each one of those districts, our election cost will be 0 almost, because they won't be on the ballot.
Okay.
Right.
Hopefully that made sense.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. So the section 2 5-year capital improvement program. This is where we have the 5-year forecast. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, we started off the year on July 1st, 2020 of $20.2 million roughly. This is what our projection is saying, that we're going to get the revenues less the expenses, and that will give us an increase in our working capital of $2.8 million. The working capital that is expected to be used for this fiscal year by June 30th, 2021 is $2.9 million. And then that leaves us a $20 million balance that is the projected amount that we're expecting on 21-22 fiscal year. And so as you can see, we're increasing our working capital because our revenues are expected to be over our expenses every fiscal year for the next 5 years. But as you can see, it starts decreasing what that difference is going to be. If you remember this last year's budget, we were actually projecting that we were going to have a deficit and we were going to have to spend some of our reserves just to make our operating, to cover the operating expenses, unless we did some cost-cutting initiatives that weren't factored into that forecast. So this 5-year forecast is looking a little bit better. And the reason primarily for that is that our property taxes increased at a greater rate than what we had originally budgeted in 2021. And our salaries and benefits didn't increase by the amount that we had anticipated, that 25% increase in benefits that we had factored in. So those two things combined are showing now that we have a positive annual increase in working capital. And over the 5-year period, that's expected to be $7.2 million. So basically, we have approximately $24.8 million in available funding for projects. The total estimate of all the identified projects is $47.6 million. So we're still funding approximately 50% of all the projects that we've determined that are necessary, although we're working on a master plan that may identify either less or more projects, as the case may be, and maybe some other funding strategies, debt issuance or grants that might become available. So this is, again, just a forecast for the next 5 years. It's a living document. As more information becomes available, this will change.
So I'm just being a little bit of a dunce here. I'm looking at funding sources and Department of Boating and Waterways grant. I thought that was around 120,000 a year, but I'm seeing 4979. Is that just the balance of the fiscal year?
Yeah, that DBW grant was for the electronic equipment, and most of that grant was spent in 1920.
Okay,
So
got it. And
Yeah,
And that's separate from the vessel destruction money.
got it. Okay.
That's a different pot of money.
right. That money is included in our operating budget because it's not a project-related
Got it.
grant.
Perfect. And what about the 800,000 that the state approved for our dredging?
The-
The
This
8,000 grant is part of the Surfers Beach Replenishment Project. So that's correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but that's incorporated into the CIP page for that project.
Okay, I just didn't see it. Yeah, perfect.
The $800,000, I thought we received something in January that said that we didn't get approval.
Oh, we were approved years ago.
We were approved, I believe, and we submitted for a request to extend that because we're supposed to have spent that money already. And I think we got approved on that, but I'll verify all that.
Okay, well, and if that's the case, then I need to include
I
that
think that-
funding.
I think that's right. Tom, when was that approved? Back in 2016, right?
I don't know if it was that far ago. No, not
What-
that. I'd say
I'm
maybe
sorry,
18.
go ahead.
I don't remember.
And I thought the application might have been approved, but if you look at the capital project update that John provides
I
in
think
his
you're right. I think
staff
John,
report.
yeah, I think Tom's right. It was probably around 18.
Okay,
Anyway,
Right.
it was approved. That was in the, oh God, Tom, was that in the governor's budget at the time?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was 17 or 18, but I think you're right. It may have been 2018 because it was a big deal that it was actually in the governor's I think May revise, I think, something like that, right?
Oh, we can look into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
do remember that being approved and that needs to be reflected in here.
yeah, I'll verify that, and then I'll change this to incorporate that for the board meeting.
Thank you.
All right. So I don't know, all the other pages are basically individual capital improvement program details. You want to
Yeah.
go through each one of those now?
Very, very briefly, very briefly. Let's just go
Okay,
to
so-
Surfers Beach because that's where that 800 would have been.
Okay. So
Correct.
here's the Catch Joanne restrooms. It's been updated with the most recent estimates.
So, oh, go on, sorry.
No, you had a
No,
question?
this is, okay, so this is, first of all, Julie, this is really great. It's very informative and I love it, what we've done. Here's the thing, when I got to this section, and I think this may have been part of the thing that I was confused about in terms of remembering, like funding for Johnson Pier, which I don't think I correctly stated, but because I'm just trying to picture all of this when I think back to this. Is there any way to organize these like funded project sheets better, like for example, a section for not started, or a section, for that's approved, or a section that hasn't been funded, something like that, where we're not just looking at, not started and the next slide is approved, or, permitting happened or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this will-
President
this
Crawley, if
will-
you look, it says on the very top of each page, it says funded projects. So the
No, I
cash
know,
is
but
funded.
right, but I'm just saying in the budget, if there, I mean, in the, when we look at the actual budget, if there's like a page, it says funded project, and then all of these things
Oh,
behind
right.
it.
So
Do you think-
here's the page.
No, I know, but I mean, when you're looking at the slides or the page, then if you're looking at a page, all of the pages that say that are behind funded budget or funded items or whatever, funded projects, then you're not searching for them, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just
Yeah,
me.
well, and so let me go to one that's not funded. This is the way future year estimates, it doesn't have any funding
Yeah,
associated
no,
with
I know,
it.
but see the heading up here, funding to be identified, right?
Yeah,
If there's any way to like make a page that says funding to be identified, and then put all of these pages behind there so that they're categorized based on the
sure.
project's status, funding status.
Sure, I can put this separate on its own page.
But all of them, like funded projects would be one section, funding to be identified would be another.
Yeah, we can put a summary sheet prior to all these that clearly states that.
Okay, but do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. To make it a little easier reading, I understand.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll
it
work with
just
Julie to make
faster.
sure that happens.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know, that was just me, but I
Oh.
think it might be clearer to people
Yeah.
when they look at this, and it'd be, they could reference them more quickly, I think.
Okay. All right, so I will put another page and it will have a list of all the projects that have been funded. And then I will have a section that has completed by end of fiscal year. And then I'll have another section that says funding to be identified. Now, some of the projects that the funding to be identified may have been funded in the past, so there will be numbers that had been funded. Like, for example, the H-Doc, we funded it and then we unfunded it. The H-Doc Johnson Pier project.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah, I understand that. I'm just trying to make this section more organized and more easily, readable.
Okay,
That, I mean,
I
that's,
think if we can, excuse me, Commissioner.
no, go
Crowley.
ahead, sorry, Jim.
I understand what you're saying. We'll have a kind of a summary sheet on top that clearly states that. And Julie, I understand what you're saying, that we've already spent money on some projects, but then the board decided to suspend future funding until all the funding going to be identified, such as H Pier and Johnson Pier. And we can kind of just have a summary sheet that shows that at the front of all this, and then
okay,
kind of an index to these sheets. So I think I know what Commissioner Crowley wants, and I can picture it in my mind, and we'll work
okay.
putting together a summary sheet that shows that. But I don't
Yeah,
want,
it's
I
not
think
the
we need to leave these
information.
current sheets. These current
Yeah.
sheets need to stay as they are. With
Yeah,
respect
I'm
to
not
that-
saying they should be changed, Jim.
With respect to the $800,000, that is an approved DPW grant from, I think it was 2016. So it's still there, and it's for construction. Also got a $75,000 grant from OPC, I think it was, for soft costs, and we've already spent that $75,000 on surface.
Yeah,
So it's still out there, and every
Okay.
year, the $800,000 becomes, the deadline to spend it has come, and we've applied for extensions, and we got that extension again this year. So
okay,
it got extended again. We don't have the money yet because we have to actually start the construction phase.
Yeah, so the initial approval was in 2016.
That's what it looks like, yes.
Yeah, that's what, okay.
okay. All right, so yeah,
So-
I'll add that back in.
So let me just make myself really clear, Jim. I'm not saying that these sheets, the information should be changed. I'm just saying that the whole section should be organized, I think, a little better so that people can understand which category these sheets go into. I think
Yes,
the
I was
information's great.
I was trying to summarize what you said, so,
I know, you did,
so
you
I
did.
just want to make sure I got it right.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, and I'll work with Jim to make sure that I'm visualizing what you're saying too.
Okay.
Maybe I can send it to you to
Yeah,
say
I'd be
this-
happy. Yes, I'd be happy.
Okay,
Tom, does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Thanks,
Okay.
thanks, Jim and Julie. The information is great.
all right, so this is Catch Joanne, the RV park restroom. This is evaluating docks 1 through 6. This is the replacement of docks 12, 13, and 14 for OPM. Surfers Beach restoration, that's where I'll add that $800,000 back in. Enterprise resource planning system. Vessel and vehicle replacement. The master plan. The construction of the admin building. Navigational aid replacement at Oyster Point Marina.
I thought we'd completed that.
This,
Yes.
we're
We
paying
completed-
for it
we
in,
put-
we're paying for it in fiscal year 2021, so it's part of the projection. And
We recently approved the contract for the design and engineering of those, and it's in that process right now.
Okay.
We're finalizing that and then put it out to bid.
these are ones that we spent money in 2021 that are completed now, which is the fishing pier repair and access walkway rehabilitation, the harbor master building office alterations, the launch ramp dredge, which we're continuing to project funds needed for the storage of the sand. These are the projects that are postponed and funding is to be identified. That's replacing docks G, F, and E. The Johnson Pier reconfiguration and H dock. The launch ramp restroom. Parking lot improvements. OPM West Basin ramp improvements. Habitat restoration. Coastal trail access or improvement. Our 40,000 square foot location for building. Signage and wayfinding program. And then this section is just the estimated encumbrances, which doesn't make sense to update until our final budget. So this will just be a placeholder for that. And then policies and definitions is
Yeah.
the next section. So that concludes my presentation. Jim, do you want to add anything or go back to any pages to talk about it more?
I think it's a very sound budget moving forward for you to consider for next fiscal year. It meets the objectives that were approved by the board earlier this year, and we'll be able to accomplish those missions. And then based on the fiscal management last year and a few other items, we were able to save a little bit of money that we can turn over and continue to move down the path of critical infrastructure, which is great news for us. But overall, Julie and her staff did a fantastic job putting this budget together, and then also increasing the usefulness of this budget by putting in goals and objectives or stats, or so that we have metrics to measure if we're being effective or not with the budget and how we spend the public's money.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Jim. This budget's really great. I think we should be very proud of it. And this is, you know, a budget that's been in the years making. So Tom, I want to thank you too for being, you know, chairing this committee for many years and being a part of this budgeting process, at least for the last 5 or 6 years I've been on this board. But also, Julie, thank you for really getting this to a point, the budget, to a point where I think it's understandable.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thanks, Jim, for overseeing all of this now as well. I mean, especially during your first year when we've had the pandemic to deal with. Any other questions? Tom, do you have any other questions?
No, I believe that's it. I think we've got a good solid document to bring forward.
Yep, and this is just the first look, right? So Julie, what kind of adjustments do you anticipate as we move forward with, you know, further along in the year?
Well, so this is the first look. I'm going to update it based on the Finance Committee recommendations for the meeting coming up in March so that the board can see an updated document. And the only change that I know of currently is an extra $40,000 in property and liability costs because SDRMA, they've had a lot of excess claims that's just driving up property rates, that plus the wildfire, plus the floods, and the COVID pandemic. I guess some people are trying to get ongoing revenues from the insurance companies. I don't know if they're paying those out or not, but loss of revenue because of the ability not to continue business operations.
So from
Yeah.
us today, do you want a motion or just direction to just put this on the March agenda for the full board to review as the first look of the 21-22 budget? Is that all y'all need right now? It's just
Yeah, I think just the direction is fine.
Yeah, the
Tom?
direction is just fine, but Commissioner Shane Crawley, if I could share my screen real quick,
Sure.
return to the mission of the Finance Committee and make sure we cover all those issues before we close out this meeting.
So do you want to reread that, Julie? Or what are you trying to do, Tom? I mean, Jim.
Jim's started sharing the screen.
Oh, here, sorry. Okay.
Jim, you're on mute.
You and Commissioner Matoush just already agreed that the scope should be develop and communicate district financial plan while protecting and managing district income and assets. That's what you approved last year as a Finance Committee, and you just approved it again this year.
Jim, you're on mute.
Sorry, the duties I want to make sure we cover too is what the duties are so we can square those away. And as you can see, last year we approved the duties was to develop long-range financial goals and recommendations along with funding strategies to achieve them. Develop multi-year operating budgets, recommendations that integrate strategic plan and objectives and initiatives. Review reserve policy in conjunction with the budget. Reporting, we wanted to develop useful and reportable report formats, develop list of desired reports, noting level of detail, frequency, and recipients of those reports. And then if our internal controls, review and staff recommended changes to financial policies, create, approve, update as necessary policies that help ensure assets at the harbor are protected, ensure access to information about district financing. And then for audit, review management recommendation letter from the auditor and ensure follow-up. And investments, review investment policy at least annually and update as necessary. Ensure provisions of the policy are followed. my only recommendation to the update to this would be with respect to, let me get my computer to work. Is down here, develop multi-year operating budget recommendations that integrate both. I would add both the strategic plan and the master plan.
Master plan. Yeah, I agree. I think that's good wording too. Tom, what do you think?
I would absolutely approve of it.
But I
Okay, so
think
why
all
don't
the
you
other
add that?
recommendations are still valid. Or-
Yeah, but I just have one quick thing for the bullet under that one that you, the review reserve policy in conjunction with the budget. I know that's not under well, we've got review investment policy at least annually, and that's obviously for investments, but given where we are now, do you think that we need to review the reserve policy a little more frequently, or do you think that we're okay with it being where it is now? I'm fine either way.
You're on mute again.
Jim, you're on mute.
I think we achieved that last year when we rewrote the reserve policy. That can come off unless the committee wants to keep it on there.
Well, I mean, I don't care either way. I just want to make sure that we're reviewing the reserve policy when necessary.
Yeah, we can say review reserve policy in conjunction with the budget.
If needed.
We do that already, but if
I
we
know.
think it's fine. So leaving it in there works just as well.
Okay, Tom, what do you
That's
think?
what we do.
Yeah, I would not have if needed. That sounds like we're being negligent.
Okay, then let's just keep it the way it is. I'm fine with it. Do you want a motion to do, well, we just made a motion to approve
The
the.
policies,
Direction.
you already
No,
approved
we
the
made a
policy.
motion to approve the mission of the finance committee or
Now,
the scope. So this is going to be in the staff report then, correct?
yes,
Okay, so just to be sure, just to be clear, we made this motion, Tom, and then the other one to move forward with bringing the first look of the budget is the one that we gave direction for. Is the thing we gave direction for.
Yeah, we
So
gave
basically-
direction. I don't think we gave a mission statement.
so you both,
Yeah, we approved the finance committee's mission statement and
Okay.
scope, I guess.
both
and
of
to
you
move
recommended moving.
forward. Right, to
Both
move it
of
forward.
the committee has approved moving the draft policy statement and goals of the finance committee to the full
To the
board.
board.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And then you gave us direction to add that summary page to the initial budget to make it a little easier to read the critical infrastructure plan and what's funded and what's not funded. And we'll get that.
But not just the summary page, Jim. I'm talking about even like organizing it so that it's not a mishmash of the status.
Right. Well, and that's what they got. The summary page will be almost an index that will
Yes, okay,
reader through each page.
okay. Okay. I think that we're all on the same page then. Okay, now I think that completes this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Chang Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much, Julie. Please thank everyone.